Empress Olivia got the news that she is pregnant, although Emperor Gusteau is not happy with this news. He was not even accepting that this child was his own. Duke Lucas Vitterpin is the first fiancé of the Empress. He was the unfortunate crown prince, who lost his position in a coup d'état 16 years ago. He has lost everything. What the new emperor gave him was only the status of a duke, akin to a dog leash. When the Empress was young, she was nominated for the position of Empress, and was engaged to Lucas. But she turned her back on him for the sake of her family. She became Emperor Gusteau's wife, the son of the emperor who staged the coup, but they could not love each other. But now she is happy that she is expecting a baby. The news of the Empress's pregnancy spread all over the empire, and the people rejoiced. She also manages the budget for the inner palace. She got to know that the budget for Rose Palace has been used up. Rose Palace, where Eve Farinaga, who is said to be the emperor's favorite, resides. She who was known as the empire's most beautiful flower had an arrogant, impudent, and wasteful personality. The emperor's love for her grew deeper as the days went by. She became more arrogant, purchasing everything she wanted. The emperor leaves national issues to the empress, but sometimes he could not come to see her for even 6 months. But after the pregnancy news, the emperor's behavior changed. The emperor actually came to meet her, and gave her a little child's shoes. The emperor took a great effort to make the shoes by himself. He asked her to forgive him for his behavior until now. The emperor signaled the maid to get tea for the empress. While they were talking about the baby, she drank it. She was happy with the moment that the emperor was with her, but suddenly she started coughing blood. The emperor was laughing at her situation. She couldn't breathe. The empress felt that the baby in her belly was slowly dying away, and also she was. She woke up in a slum house, remembering all the things that happened before she died. After seeing her face in the mirror, her first thought was, "Who is this?" She came out of the house, and when she saw the surroundings, it was clear that it was a slum. Now she promised herself that she would definitely return the pain that the emperor gave her. She was attacked by the drunk idiots, who wanted to take advantage of her. She ran toward the street, and the drunk idiots were behind her. A carriage was coming, and she suddenly moved toward the carriage. The carriage was stopped by such a horrific scene. She was unconscious. The person in the carriage came out and said, "Take her to the mansion." She woke up, but was totally surprised that the person next to her was Baron. He was the son of the previous imperial physician. After the coup d'état, he disguised himself in order to follow Lucas. He was here. That means this is Lucas's mansion. This might just be an opportunity that the goddess has given her. Olivia gave a message for the Duke. In the past, Lucas wants to build a peaceful nation. But he knows that the number of people who support Gusteau's faction rather than his father's is increasing. So, the path he wants to choose is getting darker. Olivia emphasized that if that's the case, she will light up the path ahead of him. She will become a gleaming golden rose and come to see him, the valiant black wolf who will light up the Rhone Empire. That was the promise only between them. Lucas heard from the physician who will get that message from Olivia. Lucas got confused about who she is, or if this is some kind of trap. Olivia knew if she wanted to get revenge on the emperor, she needed a higher position to meet the imperial family. Olivia gave Lucas the news that the empress has passed away. That was a shocker for him. He literally was going to kill her. He knew that she was pregnant, but that sudden death, and he did not get this news from anywhere. Olivia requested him to first hear her out. She told him the whole story, and as she will retrieve the crown for him, so please marry me. He did not agree with her. Before he could go, she threw her last trump card. She knew where the younger sister, Princess Selena, is. Princess Selena was held captive during the coup d'état. Gusteau used the princess's safety to bring Lucas to his side. After the pregnancy, Olivia knew about the princess's whereabouts. She gave him one condition. If he marries her, then she will verify the princess's safety for him. The Duke can get his throne back, and she can achieve revenge. Olivia wanted the marriage in a hurry, because they would only have less than 3 days to cover up the Empress's death. If the death is announced, the commemoration ceremony will be held, and at that time, they can't hold a wedding. Lucas told her if they get married, she will have to do a lot more than what they are doing. Such as the wedding date and it in bed in the middle of the night. Olivia agreed, saying she will try her best. Lucas ordered the butler and physician that tonight he will get married to that woman. Find a priest who can officiate at the wedding. Lucas knew if the information is correct, then she should really be the Empress's shadow. But he has to be cautious, since this could also be a trap set for him. However, that promise was only between him and Olivia. If she wasn't the Empress's shadow, then how could she have known? The marriage ceremony has started. The priest asks Lucas, "Do you take Briella Ford as your wife, and promise to love her until death do you part?" Lucas agrees and replies, "Yes, I do." The priest now asks Olivia, who is now Briella Ford, "Do you take Lucas Vitterpin as your husband, and promise to love him until death do you part?" She thinks, this is a second marriage, and the second life, an opportunity that I have gained miraculously. I will not let this go to waste. She replies, "Yes, I swear it upon my life." Before the kiss, Lucas confirms that she's not only marrying him, but also putting her life at stake. If she has no desire to go through with this, why doesn't she run away now? Briella tells him, "Because once we pass this, there is no turning back." It seems that he is greatly mistaken about something. She is not going to run away. She is prepared to put everything on the line for this. Lucas picks her up in a hurry since it's their first wedding night. After coming from the church, both appreciate their acting. Lucas wants to know where Selena is. As promised, Briella gives him information. Look for a 14-year-old boy named Noah at the Katamina orphanage located in Leneve. That's a shocker for Lucas. His sister was living as a boy in an orphanage. Lucas orders Vinter to get the knights prepared. Briella knows that the Empress has died. The Imperial Palace executive will be in complete chaos. The butler asks, "Wouldn't this be the best time for us to make a move?" Briella replies, "No. As time passes, the Emperor will keep a close eye on His Highness. This is a good opportunity to take advantage of the chaos." She continues to remind him that the festival outside will start soon. If the knights travel down the Lena River in Leneve, they will reach Bordeaux, the largest wine producer in the empire. She suggests, "How about we use attending the festival as an excuse to escort the princess?" Lucas agrees with this plan. He orders the butler to dispatch 2 of the Shadow Knights. Gusteau won't notice. The butler emphasizes his security, saying if they send the Shadow Knights, it will compromise his safety. Lucas reminds him that the gamble has already been taken. Does he not know why he has been dragged around all this time? Suddenly, the sound of the bell strikes 12 times, announcing the Empress's death. Lucas is angry at Olivia's death. But how unfortunate, the first official event they will attend after their marriage is the Empress's funeral. Briella replies, "This might be an opportunity for both of us." She gets her new identity paper from Lucas, Briella Ford, a legitimate child of a noble, whose blood might be mixed with a northern barbarian. She was a young 20-year-old lady who yearned to go to the capital. Briella asks, "Is this noble one of your highness's people? Where are they now?" He replies, "They are dead. While he was in the north, they were killed in a surprise attack by the barbarians. An emissary from the Imperial Palace has arrived. Now they are ready to go to the Imperial Palace." She memorized every detail of her identity and is ready to go. Briella is not happy with these dresses. The maid tries to tell her it is the Empress's funeral, and also the first time she is revealing herself to high society. But her answer is the same. That's why a timid appearance would not be good. The maid is a little bit angry that she intends to bring shame to the Duke in a palace where all the nobles of the country are gathered. Briella surprises her by saying, "How do you know if it is going to be a funeral or a celebration?" For someone whose death may be a reason to celebrate. They may finally be able to gain a position they have not been able to obtain for a long time. She is not going there to give her condolences for the Empress's passing, but to spread the word of Viterpan's rebirth. In the carriage, Briella thinks she has come back again. To think there would be a day when she would be invited to her own funeral. Lucas wants to know why her clothes are quite extravagant. Briella replies that the current situation is like a party for His Majesty, so since they have been invited to a party, they have to dress appropriately. Lucas thinks she looks like a woman who is no more than 20 years old, yet she has not been discouraged even once after entering the imperial palace. Her determination to use any means necessary to achieve her goals makes his concerns insignificant. Is it because Shadow takes after its owner? Just what kind of life has she lived? After arriving at the imperial palace, the emperor's butler tells him that His Majesty is waiting for him. Lucas wants to give his greetings to Her Majesty first. The butler disgraces him by saying, "As your grace, once again His Majesty is calling for you." Rather than respecting the dead, the importance of the order of the living. Noble women are gossiping about Lucas's wedding and talking badly about Duke Lucas. After seeing this, Briella thinks, "I only realized it now." He has to put up with these insults all the time. If the butler and nobles within the place can act like this, it's obvious how the emperor is. We can end these insults, but it's not yet time to bare our fangs. The emperor welcomes Duke Viterpanum and says he is very disappointed with him. He sent him to save his people from the barbarians, but it appears he wasted his time dating instead. The emperor is curious about the kind of woman he can marry in secret. Briella introduces herself to the emperor. Emperor was not happy that she was looking at him while trembling like that. He thought he would have to put her in her place. The emperor was laughing at the duke, saying that now he knows why he won over the barbarians. The question for her is whether this peculiar hair color is due to some barbarian blood in her. Lucas intervened and grabbed the emperor's hand, saying that it hasn't been that long since the war with the barbarians ended. The emperor knew that the duke talked back because he touched his woman. The emperor used his dirty tricks again, insinuating that the duke didn't even remember the empress while he was having his wedding. Is it because there is no longer an empress in the Rhone Empire? He can pay him a visit once the funeral is over. Briella knew the emperor was provoking the duke. Duke was getting very angry at this point. It's best to just lower themselves and not fall into the trap, she thought, so she grabbed his hand. Lucas calmed himself down and replied that this time, he hopes he will have another chance to see Selena. If it's all right, he would like to escort Her Highness himself. The emperor wasn't expecting that answer. As usually, Duke would be clenching his fists tightly, trying to maintain his composure so the emperor could laugh at him. When they were going back, the emperor tried to tell them that the empress, the virtuous and wise mother of the empire, had an affair. He didn't know who the lover was, but if she was truly shameless, everything would have come to light if the child had been born. Perhaps that's the reason she died. Briella replied to the emperor that she was sorry to hear about his unfortunate ordeal, which is unbefitting of his position of authority. At that time, the emperor was angry, clenching his fists and gritting his teeth. After entering the funeral party, she realized it was too messy to be called a funeral. It's as if they didn't even bother. Noble ladies were again gossiping about Duke Lucas and their wedding. Now they were also talking about the Empress's affair, connecting Duke Lucas, her ex-fiancé, with her. Briella was simply smiling at them while hearing their silly comments. Seeing this, they tried to crush her spirit. One of them suggested she offer a flower, as His Majesty is about to depart from this world. They were trying to humiliate her, knowing she was from the north, assuming a country bumpkin wouldn't know imperial funerary etiquette. Briella thought about Olivia, the final farewell to the imperial family that she had learned. She never imagined that she would be offering it to herself. She left the flower with one hand holding the stem and the other supporting it, then rotated it 3 times to diffuse the fragrance. She placed the flower buds facing the same direction as the body, and then finally clasped her hands together, as if she were praying to express her condolences. Farewell, Olivia, to your family, to the life you threw away for someone. Goodbye to you all. They were shocked that she could perform imperial etiquette without even the slightest mistake. As they were going to the ceremony hall, she suddenly realized she had left something in the funeral hall. She told him she would go back and catch up to him. She made a mistake. She was so preoccupied with the young wives, forgot to bid her child farewell. After making it upstairs, the emperor was there with her father, Marquis Rane. He was a man who placed an abhorrent value on his house, and the duties of noblesse oblige. Olivia was raised solely to be of use to the family, having to obey her father's wishes, and stand beside the emperor as if she had been sold. The person who knew better than anyone else the kind of life she led in the imperial family was her father. But that man did not offer even the slightest bit of sympathy to her. The emperor spoke to her father, saying he must apologize for his work this time, as he planned to dispose of the empress around next year, as per Marquis Rone's suggestion. Eve was begging him to do this as early as possible. He already planned to get rid of her when she became pregnant. Briella was shocked to know that her father played a role in her death. Her whole body was shaking because of this sense of betrayal. Due to her shaking, she made a noise, and her father and the emperor noticed. Her father said, "It seems that a rat has left right under our noses." The emperor started coming toward her, and she was shocked and had no strength left in her legs. Suddenly, Duke Lucas grabbed her and shielded her. The emperor arrived, but there was no one there. A rat had come, and he killed it. He wondered if it was really just a rat. Lucas looked puzzled about what had happened, but first they had to get out of there. Lucas picked up Briella, and they left. Lucas told her not to act separately from him, and said he wouldn't press her if she didn't wish to talk about it. Lucas had no idea what was going on and no idea what she saw, but how about just letting it all out? She was weeping. In the event of a death in the empire, it's usually standard for the mourning period to last around a week. But Olivia's funeral was only 3 days long. After the funeral ended, Briella was sick in bed for 3 days. A few days later, an invitation arrived for her from the imperial family. The sender was Eve Ferena. Although it was expected to hear the news that Eve would soon be crowned empress, it seems there are more opposing forces. She only had the noble title that the emperor gave her and no proper position yet. The butler asked about her garments and jewelry for society, because there were not many things prepared for her on this estate, and what was there was not enough. Briella knew she married into the duchy without even responding to her name. She had to start preparing for what was to come. Lucas told her the news that there is a spy around Selena. She wasn't expecting that kind of information. Her Majesty the Empress learned of the imperial princess's location not long before her death. Did the emperor catch wind of it? She cursed herself. If she had not been so pointlessly stubborn, they could have found the imperial princess much sooner. Lucas told her he didn't think her lips had done anything particularly wrong. She asked if he resented her. Lucas replied, "Who knows what's going on inside the dark mind of the emperor?" He learned Selena's whereabouts thanks to her. Lucas felt that she was still worried about it. He emphasized that the name, Vitterpin, is associated with that of a dog on a leash. But she is different. He personally handpicked that name to send a text to him. If she had already worn out, it would be troublesome. They have to revise their plans and her feelings towards Olivia. He can see now that they are genuine and sincere. All those suspicions about her identity remain. Lucas told her that as the madam, she is free to use the Duke's budget for as long as she needs. Briella thought, is he starting to trust me? Briella took Lucas's hand and touched it to her forehead. She said, before the second winter passes, His Highness will return to his original palace. Lucas realized now she had finally decided to help him. Her thoughts were that it was time to escape from the Olivia ghost, who is now buried in the ground. The Emperor, Eve, and Marquis Rane have begun to make their moves. She must also take action, even if it's one step at a time. Lucas was suspicious that she was really the woman he met in the slums. Yet her every movement exuded dignity. It's as if she had a strict education. Her mannerisms and way of smiling constantly reminded him of a certain someone. Just who on earth is she? At Madame Blanc's boutique, Madame received a letter from the Vitterpen estate. She thought about what to do with this. Given the status she holds, she can't just simply ignore her. She thought to teach her a lesson. After all, she's just a mere country bumpkin. She decided to hold off on sending a response. After knowing the delaying tactics of Madame Blanc, Briella decided to go herself and tip the balance in her favor first. Madame got the news that Briella would be visiting the boutique in person. That was a shocker for her. People would find out that a commoner made a duchess come to the shop. Their reputation would surely be ruined. She wanted to go to the Vitterpen house, but Briella was already on her way there. After greetings, Madame prepared some refreshments for her in a short time. Briella reminded her that she didn't reply, so she came in person, because she thought Madame might be ill. Madame thanked her for understanding, but one doesn't need to rest in peace when they are in. Briella replied, Madame, I heard that you will be thinking very hard about the Vitterpen manor. A headache can be pretty painful, can't it? Madame realized those were quite harsh words. Was it because she was from the north? Madame thought people said she was timid and delicate, but none of that seemed true. Madame asked why she came all this way. There was only one reason. She wanted to meet her. Briella told her she wouldn't have come, just because Madame had simply sold clothes. She continued that her dresses were special, because they flattered the person wearing them, and didn't follow the popular trend. These dresses symbolize money, honor, and power. So, why does the designer's honor remain unchanged? Madame was confused and asked her about her honor. Briella replied, What have the people with authority by your side been doing? They couldn't even stop a country girl from the north from summoning you. Madame worked with a needle since she was 10, and endured the disdain of nobles. She climbed up to this place without anyone's help. Many nobles attend parties wearing her dresses, but she has never once been invited to those parties. Briella said she would give her power. Madame laughed and asked if she meant giving her a title of nobility. Not even the Duke can do that. Briella replied, No, she was talking about what was stolen from her, and help her reclaim what's her. Briella gathered information from the palace, that Madame's father was a noble, and he had to marry a woman of his class. Madame Blanc's mother was a commoner, and she had no choice but to leave his side with her child. So, Madame was a half noble, but she can fill in the other half on her own. Briella knew she had a son, so she said, Think about your son's future. Madame asked what she needed her to do. On the day of the tea party at the Imperial Palace, the butler announced that Duchess Briella Vitterpen had arrived. But the three of them continued their chat. Briella realized they were going to pretend she wasn't there. She was about to leave, so the butler asked where she was going. She replied, It doesn't seem like the one who invited her is here, so she is going to leave. It didn't seem like anyone here was qualified to use the imperial seal. Baron was worried that the Duke and the Duchess didn't look like a couple who got married overnight because they were madly in love with each other. Lucas never had the time to be interested in women, even if he wanted to. Baron wanted him to realize that the Duchess is his responsibility now. Many people were watching her. The slightest mistake would make people suspect something. On the other hand, Briella emphasized that he must look for whoever is qualified to use this seal. Since the Empress is no longer with us, the letter must be from the Emperor. Eve was very angry at that moment. Briella wanted to see this reaction. If the nobles found out she used the imperial seal, she would become a laughingstock. The Emperor came and clarified that he was the one who invited her here. Briella replied that Eve acted as if she were invisible, even though she was right in front of her, so that was the reason she was going back. The Emperor replied that he was sure that was not her intention, and asked Eve how she was feeling under that weather today. Briella did not know that he could be so kind. The Emperor told them that all of them knew that Duke Vitterpin got married. So they should think of this as a small welcome party for the Duchess. The Emperor praised her for the manners of the palace. She replied it was all thanks to the Duke. He taught her very well. The Emperor exaggerated. People thought all he cared about was killing people with a sword, but he looked like he was very kind to his wife. Briella replied that he is very kind to her. He is kinder than anyone in this world. The Emperor thought she looked like a moon shining in daylight. The ladies there praised Briella's gloves. She told them Madame Blanc's skills are exquisite. She recently hired her to be her exclusive designer. Eve and the other ladies were shocked. No noble lady in the capital had ever hired an exclusive designer before. Briella was happy to be the first person to do so. Eve was not happy. How could she monopolize a designer? She must be greedier than she seemed. But Briella would not call it greed. She simply had no wish to wear the same clothes as everyone else. Putting effort into your appearance before meeting someone is a way of showing respect and proper manners. If she wanted to show her best self to every single person she met, that would be hard to understand, Lady Eve. Eve thought she was trying to tell her that she is not a lady. Only one person called her that, and that was Empress Olivia. The Emperor was very impressed with Briella's adeptness at controlling the other ladies. The Emperor told them that he had to go now. Eve came and said before he left, had he forgotten something? The Emperor replied, how could he forget? She is always on his mind. Briella now knew that this is how he behaved when he was not in her presence. Duke Lucas arrived. The Emperor asked what brought him all the way here. He hoped the Duke was not there to drink tea with the ladies. The Duke clarified that he simply came to pick up his wife. He was worried about her, because she was not familiar with this palace yet. Briella was not expecting Lucas to be here, but perhaps she should be glad he came. The Emperor was not happy at all. Something about him had changed since he got married. It had become more difficult for him to read the Duke. After the funeral, the Emperor thought that the Duke had come to him to ask about his sister, but he did not. Something felt off, so he sent someone to keep an eye on the princess. The Duke must really love his wife if he had changed this much. Briella started trembling again, and the Duke gave her his shawl. It was a bit chilly that day, and she thanked him. Both girls were very impressed by Duke Vitterpin. The Duke excused himself, saying his wife was feeling unwell. With the Emperor's permission, they could leave. The Emperor was also losing interest in drinking tea, and told them to leave his place. Although that place was the Duke's once. Duchess Tyrant invited Briella to her tea party next time. Briella accepted the invitation. She knew Duchess Tyrant was the leader of the Eastern nobles, a representative of a neutral faction. Tyrant was surprised that Briella knew her name. Briella told Tyrant that her first lesson was to memorize the nobility of the empire. Tyrant thought she might become someone who could suppress Eve Perena, who had become a tyrant in high society. So, she should pay close attention to her. Briella thought that things had gone relatively the way she wanted. Coming to this party was not a complete waste of time. She came to this tea party with two goals in mind. The first was to win the favor of the other ladies and revise the direction of her rumors. The second was Countess Lawrence. Briella asked her why she didn't come to the Vitterpen Manor sometime soon. She was surprised by that invitation, but she would have to come up with an excuse, because if Eve were to find out, she would get on her bad side. She excused herself to Briella, saying she had a busy schedule. In that case, Briella told her she would help her change her priorities. Briella said, "What will you do if I say I know your secret?" She was frightened. How did she know that language? The emperor was very angry and threw things around. Why was this happening to him? He had gotten rid of that annoying Olivia, and Marquis Rane had been obedient. But the way they both looked happy, he felt the need to separate them now. He made the decision to send Duke Lucas to work and prepare a letter for the Duchess as well. The emperor wouldn't let Duke take anything from him. He would behead himself, just like his father beheaded Lucas's father. After a few days, Lucas brought Briella to walk in the mansion, because she didn't know these servants from before. Duke Lucas had hired new staff. There might be spies among them, so it would be best to seem close. They had to put on a convincing show, but it was getting harder for Briella to act boldly, because she felt closer to him now. She thought about how he looked caring towards her as his wife, but she knew it was shameless for her to enjoy his kindness after once betraying him. Briella wanted to know how he was so good at acting. It seemed acting came naturally to him. If he had a special method, she asked him to teach her. Lucas replied that he didn't mind teaching, but it looked like they had already arrived, so he would tell her once she finished her business. He also asked her to stop calling him Your Highness. It was okay to call him that when they were alone, but other people might find it questionable. After Lucas left, she welcomed Lady Lawrence. Lady Lawrence was quite frightened because of the secret. Briella told her that the flower was beautiful. Apparently, it was from the Carly kingdom. They were not commonly found in the Rhone Empire, but she had heard they were beginning to spread. She asked Lady Lawrence if she believed that the promised time had come. Lawrence grabbed her as if Briella was also from Carly. Now Briella grabbed her hand and asked if she was, so Lawrence was going to make her kneel as the Princess of Carly. Lady Lawrence was shocked at how Briella knew that. The Carly kingdom was a nation that the Rhone Empire had destroyed. Countess Lawrence was someone, said to have been decapitated by Gusto, and hung on the castle walls. But in truth, she had barely managed to escape the palace before it was conquered. She was the last princess and the final heir to the Carly kingdom. Her kingdom had been very protective of her, so she was rarely exposed to the public. And that's why she had been able to survive this long. Briella was a little disappointed that Lawrence was showing all her cards so easily. Lady Lawrence asked if Briella was trying to blackmail her. Briella responded that she was slow, wondering how she had survived until now. This meeting might be the moment that Lawrence and the people of Carly had been waiting for. Lady Lawrence was trying to push her back, thinking that she could toy with them as she pleased. Lawrence was clear that she had a use. Otherwise, Eve and herself would have cast her aside without hesitation. Briella thought that now was the time to respond. Showing emotions was a typical bluff of someone who was cornered. Briella asked if she should pay Eve a visit right now and tell her that Lady Lawrence was the Princess of Carly. Things would get quite interesting. Lady Lawrence was trembling. If people found out who she was, everything she had done until now would have been for nothing. She had married an old count and humored Eve, but despite all her efforts, there wasn't a single thing she could learn. Briella said no matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't be able to find out anything about state affairs. If she promised to side with Briella, she would give her the information she wanted. Lady Lawrence was in a double-minded state. Would that really work? She did not seem to be lying. She was lost in her thoughts when she collapsed to the ground. Briella told her that this was not an offer. In other words, this was a threat. Lawrence needed some time to consider whether Briella was actually capable of helping them or not. Briella knew she must be cautious. Many lives were at stake. But she also knew she couldn't give her that much time. After Lady Lawrence left, Briella thought she couldn't seem to get used to threatening someone with their weakness. Lucas and Baron were trying to find the cat. Lucas found it, and it was wounded. Briella thought Lucas could never pass by an injured animal, even when they were children. Lucas explained that the little cat looked like her, and the cat came out of Lucas's hand, causing Briella to trip. She was about to fall, but Lucas grabbed her. Lucas thought she had changed quite a bit since their first encounter. She had gained some weight, and her smell was pleasant. This scent was somewhat familiar. They both stared at each other for a moment, and then suddenly turned away and apologized to each other. Baron came and told them that they had put on a good show in the beginning, but he guessed they still didn't know how to respond in unexpected situations. Married couples weren't awkward around each other like that. He suggested that they should go on a date. Duke Lucas received a letter from the Imperial Palace. The Emperor had invited Briella on the same day that Duke was leaving the capital to go to war against the rebels. Briella was shocked that Duke would be leaving on the day the Emperor invited her. Was this a coincidence? Lucas had already summoned people to guard the manor. While he was away, he was worried about her. Baron suggested that the only chance they would have to go on a date was now, so they would have to hurry. Lucas and Briella were going on their first date, but Lucas was busy with his work. Briella thought that looking at him up close, he had become an adult. His shoulders were broad. He wasn't a young boy anymore. Lucas asked her a question. He wanted to inflict damage on the Emperor's army, without him knowing. But he also had to take care of the rebels at the same time. What should she do in this situation? The Emperor was a shrewd person. He would suspect something if only his soldiers disappeared. But Lucas didn't want to sacrifice his own people, who wanted to be by his side. Briella replied that they could bury the bodies in the ground. Throwing them in water would eventually make them float, and burnt bodies could still leave traces. Burying the bodies deep enough so that nobody could unearth them would be a better option. His soldiers wait outside the capital and sneak them in under disguise during the upcoming festival. Those who followed the Emperor, or were their enemies, might try to stab him in the back while he was at war. Lucas was thinking of the same method, but he was simply hesitating because their methods were cruel. Briella had also thought over this matter many times. How could she save everyone? But this gruesome method was the only way to protect those who followed him. Lucas knew he would protect his people and return victorious. She would help him make up his mind. They were right at their destination, and people were watching them. Duke Lucas and Duchess Briella were together, standing close to each other. Lucas heard the voice of someone selling flowers. He suggested to her that she could sell more if she went to the plaza. The girl replied that she would have to pay taxes if she did that. Lucas then said he would buy all of them and give her gold. The little girl was happy. He put a flower in her hair. It suited her. Briella knew the gold Lucas paid would soon disappear, and the child would sell flowers on the street again. But this today experience could become a happy memory and empower her to endure the hard life ahead. Lucas might have grown up on the outside, but he was still the same kind of person he was when he was a child. At the beach, Briella reminded him that he was going to teach her how to improve her acting. She believed this would become the perfect date if he taught her his secret. Lucas told her that it seemed she thought he had some amazing method. But there was a saying that if you wanted to fool others, you must fool yourself first. He had loved someone in the past, and it had not ended well. He still remembered how he felt when he was in love. He used those feelings when he acted. He recalled how he felt back then, and the things he wanted to do for that person. When he tricked himself into believing those things, he could act as if he were in love. Lucas explained that he didn't mean to say that Briella was a replacement for someone else. He simply thought about how he was back then, the emotions he felt, and the things he wanted to do. Lucas asked her if she had ever experienced that. Briella wasn't sure, even if she had feelings for someone once upon a time. She had betrayed and sacrificed many people, including those she had shared affection with. Lucas emphasized that she should hear what the person had to say if she was going to hang on to her guilt. He guessed she would never get a proper answer. If they said they wanted to forgive her, it couldn't be helped. But if she never received an answer, then she might have a chance to redeem herself at least once. You are a Vitterpin now, and you mean something, at least to us. Returning from their date, Briella felt a small part of her heartache as she listened to him. If he knew that Briella was actually Olivia, would he still say the same thing? His kind words seemed to lift the weight off her heavy heart, but she still couldn't find the courage to ask for forgiveness. Count Delavigne, the best gatekeeper of the Rhone Empire, was waiting for them. He had been working with Lucas in secret. When she was the Empress, he never showed up when she summoned him, but he answered Lucas's summons right away. The Count would protect the estate while Lucas was away. His arrival was to remain a secret. The Count wanted to know if they were married, or if Briella had found a comrade. Lucas didn't trust her. It was hard to believe she was the Empress's shadow. He had been observing her. She was too much like Olivia to be lying. She seemed to have known Olivia quite well and cared for her immensely. Lucas suggested giving her time to prove herself, so he didn't think they would have to wait that long. Everyone in the manor became busier than usual in the days leading up to Lucas's departure. Time passed quickly, and the day of Lucas's departure and her visit to the castle arrived. Lucas was ready to go and didn't want to call her out this early in the morning. She was running and thought she couldn't let him leave like this without seeing her. Briella said, "Were you planning on living without telling me?" She gave him a handkerchief that she made. Lucas was quite happy. Now she have to go to palace. A few hours later she is in the imperial palace. Emperor is ignoring her that she is not there at all. He is also doing things with Eve like they are lovebirds. This is his way of showing how much he disrespects the ducal house of Viterpan. After some time, Emperor tells her about the festival of the goddess that is coming. Eve isn't quite ready to prepare a festival alone, so he would like her to help her. Briella knew that Eve could not manage the festival, so he wants to use her as a shield to protect Eve. During the festival of the goddess, Lucas and Briella won't be in the capital. They plan to enjoy the festival in Bordeaux to meet Princess Serena. Briella replies this is also her first time attending the festival in the capital. She may have been taught well, but she is simply a learner in this field. Lady Eve also wants to do this by herself. Emperor reminds her she did not manage the internal affairs of the palace last time, and embarrassed him in front of the other ladies. He gave her a chance, but she disappointed him. Did she plan to ruin the festival of the goddess and humiliate him even more? Eve was trembling at that moment. Maid came with a trolley. Emperor tell her to drink this is a very rare tea. Briella thought that looks similar to the teacup that he used on the day he killed her. This servant who brought the tea was the same, usually strong scent of the tea. So many things are similar to that moment. Is this tea safe to drink? Emperor wants her to drink the tea and reconsider his request. A sudden sense of déjà vu became a trigger, making her recall that moment vividly. But she has to overcome this memory now. She politely declines the offer. Emperor, though judging by her state, she doesn't seem to be lying. She pretended to be calm. But in truth, she was nervous because of me. Eve was not happy with this situation. The Emperor keeps focusing on that woman, even though she is right here by his side, which is humiliating. Eve tell him she take her leave now. She summoned a designer to make a new dress, and it's time for her to go. Emperor wants the Duchess to rest in the palace today and return tomorrow. Briella replies she appreciates it, but she really should return right now. She needs time to discuss this matter with Duke. Emperor exaggerated that does mean she might reject his request. Briella play with her words carefully. If she makes a mistake, it would not only she letting down House Vitterpen but Emperor as well. So she simply thinks it's something she must consider carefully. Emperor knows that she is quite this smooth talker. He feels so when she talked back at him. He wanted to crush her, but that feeling went away at the pleasant sight of her trembling before him. But she is trying to slip away again like an eel, making him want to break her legs to prevent her from leaving. He gives her permission so that she can go. Duke was a lucky man. A duchess like her protecting the estate, he would have nothing to worry about, even if he were to die in battle. On the other hand, troops are setting up tents in the forest. Boren asked, did Emperor send a man who did not even receive basic training? But their preparations are also going well, and with this kind of rain, things could not be better. The rain will soften the soil, which works perfectly for the plan. Everything was going just as planned, but Lucas did not know why he feels so uneasy. Briella confess her love toward Duke. She left her parents and siblings behind, all for his grace. So she trusts that he will return safely to where she is waiting for him. He managed to answer him somehow, but she can't stop trembling. She must put an end to this suffocating conversation. Emperor gave her his cape. He ordered her she may return today as she seem unwell, and he will send her another invitation at a later date, so she may return his cap to him then. The emperor wrapped around his cloak to a mere duchess, not the empress or his concubine. What game is he trying to play? Emperor came to Olivia's study room, and did not know why he came there, is because Briella talked like her. That look in her eyes felt like that of someone he has known for a long time. She is an interesting woman. Butler tells the emperor that the knights are stopped their march due to the sudden rain. Emperor wants them to prolong their stay as long as possible, but he changed his plan, because he wants to take her from Duke. An imperial knight tells Duke that some of the knights are sick due to food, and some are hunting wild animals. Lucas realizes the rain has stopped, and Peretta is right ahead. This man is an aide selected by Emperor. He can't be trusted. Lucas tells him to treat the patients and take care of them. Suddenly someone drops a paper. He read the paper in which that man had written that Emperor has ordered his men to stall here. So this is why he made us unable to continue marching. What is his scheming now? In Vitterpen, Briella wants to see His Highness without anyone at the palace finding out. Count explained it's not easy to meet the Duke in this situation. She must be too young to understand. Her request is immature. She got angry and tells him she is not her subordinate. Duke Lucas chooses her as his duchess. Count swore his loyalty to the Duke, so how can Count say my request is immature, when the Duke himself chose me? Butler interferes and asks her if could she tell them more about what happened. She realizes she is being unreasonable, and he is not even she should be getting angry at. Briella tell them the whole story of what happened at the palace, and Count realizes that their plan to meet the princess won't work. And they will indeed have to discuss this matter with the Duke. He will help her depart at sunrise. Baron was angry at the Emperor, that how can someone poison his own men? He need to find the antidote. Lucas thought that he is willing to kill his own knights if necessary. Suddenly a boy came, and give him a yellow rose, and he can also show him around the village. Lucas did not expect this. This is quite sudden. Then something clicking him, is Briella here? The boy kept asking Lucas if he was sure nobody was following them, because the pretty lady had told him to keep asking this. Lucas assured him, don't worry, nobody is on their trail. Our men will make sure of that. They reached their destination, where a person was standing outside the wooden house. Lucas recognized him and wanted to know why that person was there. The person waved his hand toward the door, indicating that Lucas could go there to find the answer. Lucas entered the house and saw Briella. The question was why she was here. Briella told him the whole story about the goddess festival, and its effect on their plan to meet Princess Serena. Lucas now knew the situation, but first, he cared about her as she seemed exhausted. Briella thought she was fine, but at the same time, she was trembling. Briella said she was not fine at all. Lucas thought something must have happened to her. This was the first time he had heard her speak this way. But before he could speak, Briella felt better after seeing Lucas, and that was a relief for him as well. After feeling better, she was now determined to fight back, and was thinking about how to turn this crisis into an opportunity. There was no way to reject the emperor's request, so she wanted to use this opportunity to infiltrate the palace. She had a plan. Briella had come here because she wanted confirmation that she was capable of completing her plan in the palace. The reason was Lucas was the first person to trust her, no matter how little. Lucas reassured her with a trusting look in his eyes. He was sure he could trust her. Lucas grabbed her hand and said, "This will be temporary." She didn't understand why he said that. After that, they should discuss as a group from here. Lucas called in the person who was outside the house. He introduced him as Logan Sergel. Briella recognized him. He was the best negotiator of the Rhone Empire. A legend of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a true loyal subject. Who had abandoned his land and gone into hiding after the new emperor's coronation, Marquis Sergel. Lucas told her that Marquis had always had his back, even when they were in the north. Lucas was still in one piece now thanks to him. Marquis was the person who had secretly informed Lucas about the emperor's delayed royal soldier tactics. Ever since the passing of Empress Olivia, there had been no lady capable of governing palace affairs. The emperor had a hard time preparing for the festival. The Lady Eve was not prepared to oversee a festival. Marquis understood the situation. If the Duchess succeeded, the emperor would take all the credit. If something went wrong, the Duchess would be used as a scapegoat. The emperor wanted to use House Vitterpen as a chess piece. Lucas did not want to be tied down here, and he also didn't think Briella should stay in the palace for too long. Lucas liked to figure out a way so that they could enter the palace together once his duty here was done. Briella thought, so that was what he meant by temporary. Briella agreed with Lucas's thinking. What she needed to do right now was find a way to retaliate without giving the emperor the upper hand. Suddenly, something clicked in her mind, and she spoke of the plan. What if Lucas made the first move this time? If the emperor wanted to keep Lucas here at all costs, they could take the initiative by doing the opposite, for example, carrying out an ambush. Lucas came back and wanted to know where Baron was. Baron came, and he was completely exhausted. He needed another day for the poison to be completely neutralized. Duke Lucas told the royal soldiers to come with him and asked them if they knew that his doctor was quite skilled. That was a shock for the soldier. Lucas said Baron had found something quite interesting, so he would report this matter to the emperor right away. Lucas started writing that a rebel had appeared within the order, and the rebel was in possession of a large quantity of poison. The royal soldier was frightened and thought, is Lucas talking about what he did? But he had only done that because of the order to delay as much as possible. Lucas said he didn't know exactly who it was and how many there might be. If they returned to the capital to hunt down the traitors, that would go against the emperor's order. So they should complete their mission as quickly as possible, so they could return to hunt down the rebel as soon as possible. The soldier was shocked. This meant his plan to delay them with boys had completely backfired. After some deliberation, Lucas decided to carry out an ambush to advance quickly. Briella was back at the estate and was ready to accept the emperor's request to help with the festival. She never wanted to return to that place ever again, but this was all necessary for vengeance. Lena was Briella's personal maid, and she was so excited to go to the Rose Palace. Lady Eve personally came to welcome her. A while ago, Eve did not understand why the emperor had let Briella enter the palace. The emperor tried to tell her that the duchess would be her shield, and to think of this as her lesson to become the empress. Eve was not agreeing with this. The emperor asked her if she wanted to live as his hidden woman for the rest of her life. He wanted her to be his empress too. That's why he had personally killed the empress and his child. He knew very well how miserable her life used to be. He couldn't present a mistress with no background to the nobles, who insulted him about his lineage, at least not yet. Eve understood that these were just the lessons she must take to become the empress. So, that's why Eve welcomed Briella. This way, she would have to do her job properly. Briella replied that she was pleased to see that Eve seemed to know her place. Briella continued that she wouldn't run into the emperor's arms and whine about this arrangement again, but she acknowledged that she needed her help. Eve controlled her anger and was looking forward to seeing how Briella would help her. Briella wanted to know how she could assist her, and Eve wanted her to assist in becoming the empress of the Rhone Empire. In the imperial palace, the Privy Council meeting had started. The emperor wanted to know the situation in Paretta. A nobleman stated that they seemed to have managed for Paretta to enter overnight through an ambush, but then it started to rain. The rebels managed to use the weather to keep them occupied, and they had been in a deadlock ever since. The storm had passed, but reports said there was still heavy rain in Paretta. They had requested reinforcements as many were injured. The emperor wanted to adopt a wait-and-see policy, and asked about the situation with the Ministry of Finance. Regarding tax collection after the autumn harvest, they had a lot of rain this year, and some regions were severely affected by the storm. As far as Paretta was concerned, it was said that the damage was so severe that they had almost no crops that could be harvested. The emperor emphasized that even so, they must pay their taxes. Making an exception would set a precedent, and others would then seek to have their taxes reduced. The nobleman suggested they should allow an exception. Considering the flood in Paretta, the emperor reminded him that rules were meant to be kept, and everyone must follow the law. The emperor continued and informed them that Duchess Vitterpin would be helping Eve prepare for the festival of the goddess this year. All of them were shocked. The emperor said that both of them had no proper lineage or background, but while everyone had said no to Eve, none of them had anything to say about Duchess Vitterpin. In the Rose Palace, Briella appreciated Eve's thought of becoming the empress. She thought that even though she had the blood of barbarians in her veins, she could become the empress. Briella continued that when you want something, you shouldn't simply wait for the world to change. You must change the world yourself. Why should they try to please the nobles, who look down on them because of their lineage? Eve didn't understand how she could become the empress without pleasing the nobles. Briella reminded her that Empress Olivia had been able to protect her crown despite the emperor's cold treatment, because the people of the empire, not the nobles, supported her. Briella also gave Eve the box containing the emperor's cape. The emperor had taken off his cape for her at one point, and she should have returned it earlier, but she had been sick in bed. Eve wanted to know why Briella herself hadn't returned it, and Briella replied that Lady Eve was there now. From her expression, Briella was convinced that Eve was starting to suspect the emperor. A small opening that was almost unnoticeable, a small crack. That's where everything would begin. At night in Eve's chamber, she wanted to go to Paretta to comfort the people who were suffering from the disaster. Empress Olivia would have sent food and built new homes for them. The emperor was not happy, asking why she was talking about Empress Olivia. Eve said she couldn't live as Lady Eve for the rest of her life. She knew the nobles who smiled in front of her would mock her behind her back. The emperor's mistress had braved danger to comfort the people of the empire in need, right before the festival. If the emperor's knights won right when she arrived, people would think of her as the goddess of victory. The emperor thought she had a point. If everything worked out, This would be an excellent way to suppress the nobles, who kept objecting to making Eve empress. A nobleman said that things had worsened overnight. At this rate, the farmers of Paretta might take up arms in rebellion. The emperor asked for suggestions, and they suggested lowering the taxes for the farmers in Paretta, who had suffered damages. The emperor told them that if Eve were to go to Paretta, Marquis Rane agreed with the emperor. Lady Eve, if she did what Empress Olivia used to do, might help her become empress in the future. The emperor thought that Duke was having a hard time outside the capital, but he might end up helping the farmers in Paretta at this rate, and that wasn't going to happen. In the royal carriage, Eve was not happy with the bumpy road. Her dress was all messed up now. Eve saw that Briella was comfortable, because she was wearing such humble attire outside the palace. Briella replied, asking what people would think if the person who was supposed to help them looked better than Lady Eve. Briella thought people would look up to the person who left the carriage first. Eve got out of the carriage and told them they had to walk to the village right away. Everyone would have a filling supper that night, and people were happy. A little boy there asked his mom if the pretty lady was going to give them bread. He hoped she gave the bread to the knights. They had given him their bread yesterday and today, and he was sure they must be hungry. Eve decided she would pay them a visit. Briella warned her that it was dangerous to roam around on a battlefield without a commander's order. Eve disagreed and grabbed Briella's fist, signaling toward the hill that she would visit them with Duchess Vitterpin. Eve was happy that she was finally out of the carriage, but Briella thought they should head back now. She knew that there were more knights surrounding them than she had expected. Even if Eve was the emperor's beloved mistress, the knights should be fighting elsewhere. Lucas wouldn't order them to do this. Eve was shouting that she couldn't see in the dark, and that the royal soldiers should prepare a torch right away. Briella knew it was difficult to see in the dark, and the ones beneath the hill must be the rebels. A royal soldier fetched the fire and lit up the area. Briella told them to put the fire out. The rebels were nearby, right below the hill. Soldiers hiding in bushes came out. Eve told them she had brought food for everyone. Soldiers signaled her for the fire to be off. A royal soldier stopped them, saying that Lady Eve was personally there to encourage their knights, and they should show respect as knights. One royal soldier shouted that this was a battlefield, and they might have to start fighting at any moment, so the fire should be put out. Suddenly, Duke Lucas arrived and asked what they were doing. A royal soldier explained that Lady Eve had come all the way there to bring food for the knights. Duke Lucas wasn't happy. It wasn't even broad daylight, and a battle could start at any second. Yet he had escorted a woman there without his permission. The royal man replied that Lady Eve didn't need someone's permission. She only followed the emperor's orders. Lady Eve entered the conversation and said that she was here because Lucas had faced quite a few difficulties as the commander, and the emperor was very concerned. Duke Lucas believed that such concerns would be best discussed in a warm reception room over tea. Lady Eve started clapping, saying it appeared that Duke Lucas still didn't know who ruled this land. Lucas thought he heard the faint sound of water growing louder. The battle would begin soon. They couldn't let this go on. Did she want everyone there to die because of that torch? Briella intervened, stating that they should leave now. She had seen the soldiers. It was too dangerous to stay there any longer. Lady Eve was surprised by their different attitudes toward her. Didn't they see that the Duchess was there in person? Wasn't this a union of newlyweds? They should be passionately kissing each other by now. But this wasn't what she expected. She wanted to see the passion that made him marry the Duchess behind the emperor's back, but she wondered if the rumors were true. She couldn't complete her sentence, and then the ground started rumbling. A royal soldier was hit by an arrow. The rebels had begun their attack. Below the hill, the rebel army would also be questioning why the ground was shaking so much. Water was leaking through the wooden safety wall, and suddenly the water burst out. The dam broke down, and the ground was falling apart. The muddy foundation wouldn't last long. Everyone was running for their lives. Lady Eve didn't know what was going on. A royal soldier grabbed her shoulder so he could stand. Briella thought she should have stopped her from coming here, no matter what. Suddenly she heard Lady Eve's voice saying, "Help me." Lady Eve grabbed Briella's hand, and a royal soldier grabbed Lady Eve's gown. Duke Lucas thought, "Where is Briella?" He shouted her name. Briella replied, "Over here." Lady Eve asked for help. Briella thought about what she should do. Lady Eve was dragging her down, and the tremors indicated that the place was going to sink soon. The plan would have been perfect if she was not here. Briella thought, should I just shake her off? If she met her end here, it should come after Briella got her revenge. Briella wanted to be the one to give her the most miserable death. Dying like this was too easy and peaceful. This wasn't her time. But Briella was at her limit. Duke Lucas came and grabbed Lady Eve's hand, getting both of them up. Lucas was angry and asked Lady Eve what she was thinking. Briella's arm was scratched just now. Duke Lucas tore his cloth and tightly bound her wound. Lucas told them to escort the Duchess and Lady Eve away from there. Briella thought, does he always fight alone on the battlefield like this? Does he always wander as the Dark Knight by himself? The night he lost the throne, the night he lost everything, was in the past, but he still looked lonely. For whom and what was he making these sacrifices? They were at the village now, and the wound was starting to hurt more. Someone put a cape on her and said, "You don't see well, Your Grace, come this way." Briella thought she couldn't see in front of her, but strangely, the voice didn't sound dangerous. She entered a house, where some villagers were gathered. They told her she should change first, and they would make some potato soup for her. One lady told her that the people who had come with her had left Briella's things in another house. They were there to aid her, but this was all they had right now, and they wanted to offer it cleanly. Briella thought it looked expensive for a villager's garment, as they were giving her their best clothing. She thanked them after changing her dress. One lady asked if she would treat her wound now, but Briella refused, saying she would leave it as it is. Briella asked where the red-haired woman who was with her was. The woman replied that a knight had taken her to the inn just now. Briella thought that the wound would be useful, so she had to leave it like this. Then it was about time to begin her plan. Briella told them she got an idea while eating. She would need a big cauldron and people. Would they help her? The women didn't understand what she was talking about. Briella simplified it, saying that she wanted to repay everyone for the kindness they had shown her. Lucas came and expressed concern about Briella, urging her to properly take care of her wounds before continuing to work like this. Briella thought that he was stained with blood and dirt all over, looking more exhausted than ever. She didn't think Lucas should be worrying about her injuries right now. If she said that the first thing she felt when she saw him was relief, would that make her cruel? But she was truly grateful. Briella was glad. He wasn't one of the people screaming in pain inside the tent after all the time they had been apart. She could finally feel that he was back alive by the warmth in her arms. Lucas wondered why he was so angry whenever he saw her injured arm. Before he could even think of calming himself just now, he had acted on impulse without thinking. Marquis Sergel had once said something. In order to trick others, you must speak lies together with more lies. And to trick yourself and others, you must speak the truth together with lies. They had started with false emotions and a contract, but now could he really say that his actions and thoughts were all lies? The feelings that had started from lies were becoming the truth, and he could feel the boundary fading more and more. Lucas pushed her back, thinking that people wouldn't suspect anything between them with that kind of embrace. Briella replied that was not her intention, but that was reassuring. Women watching them were emotionally touched by their actions. Briella asked Eve how she was feeling. Eve replied that she was a lot better now, and thought she got hurt while saving her. Briella emphasized that she must go outside now, even if she was not well. She had a reason to come here. Lady Eve told Countess Lawrence to prepare her clothes. She must go outside. Then she rushed toward the door. Emma asked what they should do now, as they had almost done everything Briella had asked them to do. Briella replied that Emma had done well, and now Lady Eve would be in charge. Everyone should follow her orders. Lady Eve came out and saw people gathered around. They started questioning, saying they were running out of soap. Could she distribute the materials necessary for repairing the embankment? Eve was shocked, wondering why they were asking her about that. She had thought all she had to do was hand out the food they brought. How was she supposed to give them orders about all that? This was too complicated. Lady Eve ordered Countess Lawrence to distribute the materials the people needed. The Countess was startled. Eve reminded her that the people were waiting and she didn't have time to loiter around. Eve thought that everyone was looking at her differently. Instead of gratitude and generosity, she wondered why they weren't looking at her that way. People asked her if they didn't have any food for the children yet. When would they be able to receive food? A woman asked her where the Duchess was. Baron couldn't believe that she dressed like that, in front of people struggling to make a living. No wonder the people were displeased with her. Compared to her, the Duchess had command and a strong presence. She appeared at the right time when people needed help. After laying the foundation, she appeared and brought everything in the village to a stop. Was this all part of her plan? Briella got the first aid box for the Duke. After entering the room, she saw that Lucas had countless cuts on his body. The first aid box was dropped from her hand. She was shocked. Lucas thought that the ointment was for injuries. An idea suddenly came to his mind. This is a good chance to test what she thinks of him. Lucas asked if it wasn't medicine. His injuries had been stinging since he got water on them, and he wouldn't be able to reach all of them on his own. Would she help him apply the medicine? Briella thought that it's not like this is her first time looking at the naked body of a grown man. She's not a little girl, and he just needed help applying the medicine. Lucas stared, wondering what was taking so long. He needed to leave soon since people were looking for him. Briella thought it was that obvious that she was nervous. Briella was sure she was just imagining things. The temperature inside the room felt unusually hot, even though winter was coming. The sunlight seemed unusually bright that day. Seeing him this close reminded her that he's an adult now. She was so conscious of him that it almost felt like her finger was throbbing every time she touched him. How embarrassing. Lucas winced a little and asked what was wrong. Did she do something wrong? He said that the raw wound hurt a bit. Briella thought she was such an idiot, thinking such things in front of an injured person. She could clearly see the path that Lucas had taken since he lost the throne. It must have been so hard trying to protect what he still had, even though he had lost so much. The goddess has been watching, and she knows the goddess will make his wishes come true. Lucas thought he had heard those words before, when he was a child. As part of his education, he had raised and looked after farm animals. That winter was too cold, and some animals ended up freezing to death. He couldn't forget about that even after winter passed. Olivia had come and said, "The goddess has been watching everything you have done, so she trusts that the goddess will make sure your wishes come true." Even if she was Olivia's shadow, was it possible to say something so similar? A few hours later, people came and asked Emma where the Duchess was. Was she not going to help them anymore? Emma replied that she was asleep. A woman thought that this must be her first time going through such a rough experience, and she was injured too. Briella had helped them all night without getting any rest, even though she was a duchess. They should let her rest for a moment. Lucas received news that a royal soldier was injured, but it wasn't life-threatening. He was an important witness in this case. The emperor would certainly suspect him for the disaster that swept away all his soldiers. But he could change the situation with the royal soldier's witness statement. He should go and check on him in person. Lucas touched her hair, and she woke up. She was exhausted. Lucas told her that there was something she should see. Outside the house, there were dried meat, dried fruit, carrots, potatoes, and fruit. Lucas had earlier noticed that some people had arrived and brought medicine and food supplies. Briella told him that she had disguised them as festival merchants. Some of them were people of Count Delavine's. Lucas thought that even with the help of the people back at the manor, that was a very bold move. Briella knew that everyone had a similar opinion. They all thought that Peretta needed outside help. Lucas said that this was hard to believe, even considering that she had been Olivia's shadow. Her actions were often as bold as Olivia's, and sometimes she even seemed like Olivia herself. So, what did she plan to do with these supplies? According to her plan, they should be having trouble distributing the supplies to the townspeople. She had secretly switched the ledger that detailed the location and quantities of the supplies. Clear records of all the supplies must be kept, and they couldn't reorganize the considerable amount of supplies. They must be utterly confused right now. She had thought of returning this since it might have been someone else's mistake, but if she went out now, she would have to do Lady Eve's bidding. So, they should be grateful and cook something with this. Lucas knew that Olivia didn't know how to cook. He had never seen Briella cook back at the manor, because there was no need for that. Briella also agreed that she didn't know how to cook. Lucas knew how to cook, so he would make stew. Lady Eve would personally bake and distribute bread to the farmers tomorrow. Count Lawrence thought that she already had her hands full, trying to figure out all the supplies from the palace. Countess told her that there was a problem with the ledger of supplies. Eve replied that they couldn't just make a new one. Countess clenched her eyes and thought that she was not listening at all. If this went on, she would have to take full responsibility for managing all the supplies. And if the rain came again, the grain they brought would get wet and be useless. Count Lawrence advised her to ask Duchess Vitterpin for advice. Eve thought that she didn't want to face her right now. But Duchess had a perfect opportunity to get rid of her, but she had helped her. The Duchess's behavior was confusing. Eve asked Lawrence if she believed that the Duchess could help her. Count Lawrence thought what Duchess said, if the time she was waiting for didn't come, she should make it come herself. So, the time had come. Countess reminded Lady Eve that the path she was taking was similar to the Duchess's. Eve didn't understand how it was similar to her. She was the only one whom the Emperor himself favored. Countess explained that she didn't mean it in that way. She was referring to how the Duchess started out as a country girl from the north. Other nobles might mock her origin, but commoners didn't see her that way. To them, the Duchess was someone who overcame the difference in status and won her love. So, she should use Duchess Vitterpin as her shield, the woman who won a duke's love. Eve wondered if that was true. If the love was an act, the people would not admire her anymore. So, that was her chance to reveal the truth now. She opened the door and was surprised to find Duke Lucas there. He asked her what brought her here so early in the morning. She should know better than to bother a newlywed couple who had reunited after a long time. Lady Eve replied that she was here to see the Duchess. It was an urgent matter. Lucas reminded her that it was quite rude to visit someone this early in the morning. Eve got angry and thought he was changing the subject. Lucas called Briella, asking if she had heard that. Briella came and said that now was not a good time. Eve thought that she didn't know that Duchess could make a face like that. She actually looked like a blushing bride in love. Lucas suggested that she should return to the inn. Eve replied that she would wait outside. Lucas got angry, wondering how much more patient he needed to be with a lady who was being so rude to a duke of the empire. He asked if she was acting this way out of curiosity, jealousy, or envy for what she didn't have. She looked confused. Lucas ordered her as a Duke of the Rhone Empire to escort Lady Eve back to the inn. Lady Eve apologized for her disrespectful behavior, considering it the mistake of an ignorant person, and asked for forgiveness. She would apologize to the Duchess later. Eve thought that she could endure this humiliation because she would become the Empress one day. Briella thought that they would have had a big problem on their hands if Emma hadn't noticed and come to warn them. Briella wanted to know why she had come so early in the morning. Eve replied that they were here to help the people, but she seemed to be neglecting her duties. Briella emphasized that she had helped the people by cooking soup and setting up tents, while Eve did nothing. She took a step back after finally choosing to take the lead. Eve tried to say that she had to stay by her side, but Briella reminded her that she was the one who accompanied her when she was going to the hill. She was the one who would save her life. In the Empire's history, had a duchess ever assisted an emperor's mistress? She was trying to insult the Rhone Empire. Briella threatened that she'd better stay alive until the end, staying alive and watching how she would destroy her. After that, Briella assisted her in going outside regarding supplies. Lady Eve should distribute food and find a woman named Emma. Lady Eve tried to ask Count Lawrence, but Briella interrupted her, saying that she must do this herself. The maid's job was to prepare the bread, but it was the noble ladies who passed that bread out. Women thanked Lady Eve for filling their empty stomachs, and she replied that it was her duty to help the people of the empire. She told them to remember this day for the rest of their lives, but she knew there was someone else they should really be thanking. The women thanked Briella for everything she and Duke had done, wondering how they could repay them for their actions. Briella gracefully replied that there was no need for any of them to repay them. They were the ones who made this happen. Briella gave Emma a gift for her, hoping that their paths would cross again in the future. Emma didn't want to accept it because it was so valuable. Briella reminded her that the miracle would never have happened if she hadn't escorted her that night. All the villagers bowed towards Briella, realizing that not all nobles were scary. They would never forget the kindness she and Duke had shown them. Count Lawrence came and asked if she could speak with her for a moment before they got on the carriage. Countess reminded her of the conversation they had at the Vitterpen Manor, asking her to give her some time. Now, Countess Lawrence had made a decision. After watching Briella win the hearts of the villagers, she felt assured. She would achieve nothing if she stayed frightened and did nothing next to that incompetent Eve. So, as Briella had advised, she wanted to create her own opportunities, instead of simply waiting for one to come along. She would accept her offer. Briella shook hands with her, telling her she had made a wise choice. Eve was happy to be going back. Once they returned, she wanted to do nothing but rest. Briella told her she must come for the families of those who died. Eve did not agree with this. She didn't think it would help her become the empress. She didn't think that nobles cared about any of this. She had to order new dresses as soon as she got back, because there would be a hunting competition on the eve of the festival, and it would be under her name. Briella was concerned about how one could think of taking lives before the sacred festival of the goddess. Eve said the empire belonged to His Majesty, and who would dare deny his wishes? The festival was held to thank the goddess for watching over them for the past year, and His Majesty wanted to hold a hunting competition before it, in his mistress's name. The temple would never approve of that. Briella felt a terrifying sense of uneasiness. After reaching back at the imperial palace, the emperor thought they all looked exhausted. Eve explained that she had worked very hard. The emperor suggested that everyone needed rest, and that they could continue the discussions tomorrow at the meeting. Briella mentioned that despite everything the knights had gone through, the emperor wouldn't even hold a small banquet, let alone recognize their deeds. She was getting a bad feeling about what was to come. Lucas asked about the hunting competition, but he was also worried about how they were going to try and keep them apart. They had prepared what to say regarding what happened in Paretta. Briella explained that she had a good idea about that matter. He should focus on acting like a loving husband at tomorrow's meeting, even more loving than he had acted until now. On the day of the council meeting, the emperor emphasized that they should skip the formalities and begin at once. One nobleman stated that Duke Vitterpen was the true troubleshooter of the empire. He resolved everything again without a hitch. Briella thanked His Majesty because all this had happened due to him. His Majesty took pity on the situation in Paretta and sent Lady Eve. The emperor thought about why she was praising him so willingly. She certainly knew how to make a person feel good. The emperor emphasized if they were saying they succeeded thanks to him, then did that mean that everything that went wrong was also because of him? People were talking throughout the empire, calling it a miracle. But he had heard that the rebels at the bottom and the knights at the top were all buried when the bank collapsed. Surprisingly, most of the knights who went missing were royal knights. So, Duke, did you intentionally damage the bank as part of your strategy? Lucas clarified that the ground was weak from the prolonged rainfall, and it was a natural disaster. The knights were positioned. However, he didn't know that Lady Eve would visit, which caused great damage. The emperor asked if he was saying that the emperor's woman got in the way, even though she was injured in the process. Lucas replied that her visit had exposed the location, where the knights were waiting in the ambush. A nobleman asked if the emperor was worried about Lady Eve, and the emperor agreed with him. Briella saw this as an opportunity to plan to leave the palace and return home, because she needed treatment as well. A nobleman was angry that her injury was so severe that she must turn down the opportunity His Majesty had given to house Vitterpen. Briella revealed the wounds, and nobles started whispering that it was true. She was injured while saving Lady Eve's life. Briella explained that she would only shame the imperial family by remaining in the palace in her current state. As Lady Eve needed His Majesty by her side, she needed Duke Vitterpen by her side as well. A nobleman stated that she could not leave the palace now. What about the festival of the goddess? Another nobleman suggested that the Duke could stay in the palace instead. Briella wondered what he would do now. Would he still try to keep them apart? The emperor asked if it was because the Duke was next to her now. She used to tremble in front of him, but now she was testing her limits. Briella knew that there was a time when she had vowed to endure his cold gaze and words, and live only as an impressive figure for the people. But now, what would he do? A nobleman stated that they should not judge a situation just based on baseless rumors. Another one countered that this tragedy was sparked because Lady Eve had demanded that torches be lit. Both noble men started a heated conversation. The emperor slammed the table and told them to remember that he was still there, and both of them apologized. The emperor looked at Briella. Her wounds certainly seemed severe, but Duke didn't seem that concerned. Lucas replied that he was disappointed in himself for failing to protect his wife. After much regret, he became grateful that he could be with his wife. The emperor asked Briella if she should be happy to have such a loving husband, and Briella agreed with the emperor. That's why she didn't want to be separated from him ever again. A nobleman took the bait, wondering if her display of affection with no regard to the time and place made it wise to let them be together. Briella agreed with his suggestion, stating that's why she wanted to go home, before she troubled His Majesty. The nobleman now thought he had become an idiot. The emperor announced that the Duke had much to take care of, and going back and forth between the Vitterpen Manor and the palace would be a waste of time. They needed to investigate the bank collapse, how the Duchess was injured, and how the one who became Empress had almost died. A nobleman with black hair thought, they managed to silence the emperor and his followers. How impressive. What was this couple up to? After the meeting, Briella wanted to know why Lucas was angry. Lucas was angry because he thought she didn't have time to treat her wound, but she intentionally left it like that. Briella replied that she did what was necessary to raise the stakes and move forward. Lucas didn't agree. At this point, creating such a result if she wouldn't be there to enjoy it was reckless, and he was intentionally feigning innocence now. At the Vitterpen Manor, the butler told Lucas that he had completed his task about the Duchess. The result of the butler's investigation differed from what Briella had told them. The Duchess claimed that she was Emperor Olivia's shadow, but there was no proof that she had stayed in the southern part of the empire. The butler was also unable to find traces of her anywhere in the south after he had gone to the slums. People there said she was a woman who seemed to have fled from the north, and she hadn't been living there for long. Lucas thought if Briella had come to the south only recently, that meant she could not have been Olivia's shadow. Briella resembled Olivia too much to not be connected to her in any way. Then that meant Briella was Olivia, but how? Was it possible for someone to take the form of a completely different person? He had only heard about such things in fairy tales. Lucas asked the butler. He needed to see something for him again. This would be the last time. Duke and Duchess were welcomed by Heron, the steward at Lindera. Briella recognized him. He was always by her side in the palace. Lindera was a small castle attached to the Rose Palace. The steward showed them a room, and when they entered, Briella was shocked. There was just one bed. Both of them were flustered and made excuses that they both were not tired. Lucas thanked her, saying that he wouldn't return to the palace so soon. Lucas was born in the palace. His birthplace was taken away from him. But now that he was here, he thought he might achieve the goal he had vaguely hoped for. Baron came and scolded her as a doctor. He wouldn't stand for her treating her body so recklessly ever again. What she did was very foolish. Briella replied that it didn't hurt back then. Baron said, of course, it didn't, which is why she would suffer the consequences now. She would have to sleep all night because of the soreness from the medication. At night, Lucas checked to see if her fever had gone down or not. He lay down on the sofa and felt confused. Lucas thought he couldn't imagine not having her by his side, and to be honest, he relied on her a lot. What if she really was Olivia? And even if she wasn't, what should he do then? At the same hour, someone else was also getting ready to go to the palace. She wondered how splendid the people in the palace were, and she wondered if Lucas was doing well. Briella told them they must select noble ladies to help them prepare for the festival. Butler came and told Lady Eve that Count Delavine had come to the palace and was having an audience with His Majesty. The Count had brought his daughter along with him. The Empress suggested that the Count's daughter reside in the Rose Palace during his stay in the capital. Briella thought, why would the Emperor suggest that? All off a sudden here. Now, she was on her way here right now, so they should get ready to welcome her. However, Eve had a different opinion. This was her palace, and she had not given her approval. Briella told her that she was suggesting they not make Count Delavine's daughter wait. The Count was a key figure of the neutral faction and had many followers. It would be unwise to upset him. Rose came and introduced herself as Rose Delavine. Lady Eve was shocked and couldn't even speak. Briella welcomed her and told her she could help them prepare for the festival. This was an opportunity for her to meet other nobles, since it was their first time in the capital. Rose said she would be happy to help. Eve grabbed her arm and asked if His Majesty had seen her in person. Rose replied that yes, she had met the Emperor with her father, and the Emperor had praised her pretty eyes. Briella tried to calm the situation and get Lady Rose out of there. Briella apologized on her behalf, mentioning that Eve could be very unpredictable. Rose was very surprised. She had heard that the ladies of the capital could be sensitive, but she didn't know what had irritated her. Her father had told her to adjust to the palace no matter what happened. Briella thought that just adjusting to the palace was not strange, considering she would be staying there for a while. Suddenly, Rose saw Lucas and hugged him. Lucas said it was a miracle that her doting father gave her permission. She replied that her father was glad to send her here, and it was an opportunity to learn about the palace. Briella had never seen Lucas smile like that before, and wondered why she felt like they were suddenly so far away. Rose praised the place where Lucas was staying and moved on. Lucas told Briella they should get going too, hoping they hadn't troubled her. Rose was shocked to see them together. After Rose arrived, the preparations for the festival went smoothly. First, they recruited more noble ladies like her. Noble ladies would not be willing to serve Eve as a symbol of adultery. That's why the emperor wanted Briella to lead the preparations. Young ladies who had just debuted in society came forward to prove their abilities. Lucas was tasked with petty labor that only undistinguished nobles would do. Eve had been behaving a bit strangely lately, drifting away at one moment, then screaming and pulling on her hair the next moment. After chatting with her, she had expressed concern about Rose. Briella said the Count was very fond of her and had even given her a curfew. Suddenly, Lucas came. He had been looking after the horses in the stable and the animals that would be released for the hunt. Lucas revealed that Serena had disappeared. Briella was shocked. She thought Serena had arrived safely in Bordeaux. Lucas replied that they were about to meet her, but they suddenly lost touch with the Shadow Knights. He allowed the Shadow Knights to assess the situation and make decisions on their own. Briella grabbed her from behind and assured her that they would be all right. For help, the princess was taking a longer route. Lucas asked if Serena would recognize him and what if she resented him for being too late. Briella emphasized that if she didn't recognize him, he had to tell her. She would be delighted to find out that her amazing brother had been desperately looking for her. A few days later, Lady Rose asked Briella if she could join her for breakfast that day. Briella agreed, and they planned to head to the Rose Palace together. Lucas came, and Rose was happy to see him, telling him that the Duchess had invited her to breakfast. Briella was shocked. She hadn't invited her. Rose was the one who had asked her first. Rose grabbed Lucas's arm and got ready to go to breakfast. Baron explained that the Duke and Lady Rose had been close ever since the Duke was separated from the princess. Rose asked Briella if she was close to Lucas. She was worried when she first heard about Briella from her father. Briella didn't understand what she meant. Rose guessed that she wouldn't know very well, but Lucas was very careful about who he kept by his side. Briella thought about her eyes. Now that, Eve had been quite irritated when talking about her eyes. She wondered if there was some reason for that. Rose said, "Your Grace," but Briella was lost in her thoughts. She apologized, saying she was lost in thought, and asked what she was saying. Rose wasn't happy. Perhaps Lucas had made the wrong decision after all. How could she get distracted while speaking to a noble lady like her? She was disappointed that someone like Briella was by Lucas's side. Briella got angry. Rose was forgetting who she was. She was Duchess Briella Vitterpen, the lady of House Vitterpen. Rose argued with Briella, saying she didn't even know what the name Vitterpen meant. She shouldn't claim that name so carelessly. Briella told her it appeared she still didn't know. There were eyes and ears everywhere within the palace. Rose started crying, and Briella didn't understand why all of a sudden. She hadn't said anything harsh. Briella saw the tears, and suddenly realized that Lucas was there. It is obvious what Lucas will think between a young lady crying pitifully and his fake wife. The Count and his daughter have built a long-standing trust with Lucas. Has Briella produced enough results and gained his trust? Rose lied, saying it's all her fault. The Duchess is angry because she made a mistake, and she apologizes to her Grace. Briella thought she completely fooled her and ambushed her. She can't even complain about this to anyone, and she wonders whether the tears are real or fake. Lucas stated that Rose must have been startled, but he cannot kindly overlook her mistakes anymore. She seems to have forgotten that this is the Imperial Palace. She must be more alert. First of all, she should stop calling him by his name. And Briella, she looks like she wants to cry. He doesn't mean to get involved with what happened between them. She doesn't have to force herself to accept Rose's apology because of him. He simply came here to return the gloves that she left behind. Briella thanked him and wanted to put them on herself, but Lucas grabbed her hand and whispered in her ear. She seems to keep forgetting that they got married because of love. After the carriage came, Lucas asked what she thought. "Aren't he such a supportive husband?" Briella replied, "Yes, you are incorrigible." After some time in the Imperial Palace, Lady Eve threw the flowers away, saying that the yellow flowers were too pathetic for the festival. Rose tried to say that these flowers had always been used for the festival of the goddess. Eve got angry that she had not been given this task. Lady Haley intervened, saying that these yellow flowers were only used in places where all people could enjoy themselves regardless of their status. She suggested to Eve to look at the next page if she wanted to know more about the imperial banquet. Eve was very happy with her performance and praised her. Briella thought, has House Haley decided to side with the Emperor completely? It's startling to see how eager they are. Eve is strangely wary of Rose. She was criticizing her for no good reason. Something is going on here, but she can't place her finger on it quite yet. Briella suggested using wild roses like this. It will be essential to explore the places in the city where crowds will form. Eve said, why doesn't she go? The Duke is waiting for her as always. Briella is now with Lucas. He tells her it's about time they feed the hyenas, who like to watch and gossip about them. Lucas wants to taste a street delicacy, a kind of skewer with chicken meat. It hurts, so be careful. Briella tries it, and is amazed at how tasty it is. Lucas cleans the sauce off her face. He has never seen her like this. After a while, they brought a bunch of presents for everyone back at the manor. This was her first time coming to a night market like this. Briella was always so busy that she never considered taking a break and coming out like this. Lucas asks her about the kind of life she had that she couldn't even visit a place like this once. Or she was trapped within the palace just like Olivia. He doesn't know much about her even though she has become a part of his life. So now he wants to know more. He wants her to tell him a little bit, if she thinks he deserves to hear her story. He wants to know more about her past. Briella replies that she will tell him when everything is over. Lucas asks if he may ask her just one thing. Among all the things she has told him until now, were there any lies? Before she can answer, some thugs gather around a child. They grab him and tell him he should not have come to the night market with empty pockets. The child screams that he hasn't taken anything. One of the thugs raises his hand to beat the child, but Lucas grabs his hand. How dare he show such unsightly behavior where nobles come? He has got some nerve. All of them try to run, and Lucas asks the child if he is all right. The child thanks him. The child notices there is soup on Lucas's clothes, and he apologizes while trying to clean the clothes. Lucas tells him he doesn't have to do that and raises his head. It's not his fault. Lucas gives him gold coins. The child is shocked and hesitates that Lucas is giving him this much gold. Lucas emphasizes that the goddess sent him, so he doesn't have to decline. Chilled thought, have we met before? The child shakes his head and says, thank you so much. He's in hurry, but he won't forget his generosity. He'll pay it back somehow if they meet again. In the Vitterpen Manor, Lucas suggests that they should rest early tonight because the hunting competition begins tomorrow. Briella thinks, is he going to sleep on the sofa tonight too? She didn't say anything until now. But it would not be right for her to let him continue sleeping on the sofa. If someone were to walk in and see them like this, they could realize that their marriage is an act. She thinks they have grown close enough now for her to ask things once in a while, things that are necessary for their contractual marriage. Briella grabs Lucas's clothes and says, "Why don't we start sleeping in the same bed starting tonight?" They are both on the same bed now, but Briella thought she might have been too distant until now. She feels like things have suddenly gotten awkward between them. Briella emphasizes that she is sorry she made him uncomfortable and suggests they do this since she was worried. But they don't need to do this if he finds it difficult. So this time, she slept on the sofa. Lucas grabs her arm and replies that he is not uncomfortable, so she can stay here. Briella is relieved that he doesn't find this unpleasant. She didn't know the sound of someone breathing could be so comforting. Lucas tries to chat with her, but she falls asleep. They are both very close to each other. Lucas thinks he might lose his mind. Her identity is unclear, and she keeps reminding him of someone who met an unfortunate end. He has a hunch that he will be in trouble if he falls for her, but he can't stop looking at her. A while ago, Lucas asks Baron if he thinks she resembles someone. Baron tells him not to say that in front of the Duchess. That's what women hate hearing the most. Lucas feels guilty after hearing Baron's words. He doesn't know if he's attracted to Briella because she reminds him of Olivia or because he enjoys his time with her. On the next day, the Emperor starts his speech, explaining that the purpose of this competition is to honor his goddess before the festival of the goddess begins. The lady who receives the most game during the competition will sit next to him during the festival. Briella thinks he is basically ordering everyone to offer their game to Eve. He is blatantly holding an event for his mistress before a holy celebration. On top of that, Lucas has not said anything since they woke up today. Briella tells him he doesn't need to hunt anything for her. She just wants him to return safely. Lucas replies, "That's a relief. He don't have to take lives to please her." She wants to give him something before he goes, but Lucas says he has something to tell her when he returns. Could she give it to him when he returns? After Lucas is gone. Briella thinks, the Imperial family may manage this place, but the forest will be full of arrows and blades. She hopes he doesn't get hurt. The Emperor asks how his prey is, and Marquis Haley replies that they have driven the prey into the hunting ground. The Emperor victoriously says he has suffered small losses so far, but now it's time for his big victory. The hunt finally begins. How very exciting. Hey guys, I hope everyone is doing well. I have an announcement for you all. For the time being, this video will be the last part of the story, as we have already covered the story to the latest chapter of this manhwa. We will resume the video when we will have enough chapters available, but this is not the end. This channel has many amazing ongoing stories, so you can check them out.